Hello, I'm Brigantia Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Tuesday. It's time for our next installment of Pagan Problems, and this week we're going to be discussing about how to navigate disapproval, specifically disapproval for our spiritual beliefs coming from, oh yes, keyboard warriors. This is all going to be about dealing with those pesky little trolls that we encounter in the online setting. You know the ones who are gleefully clicky clack, telling us that we're going to hell or telling us that this is a Christian nation and there's no room for you nasty, dirty pagans here. Yeah, those. Not only are they deficient in manners, I think it's worth pointing out that there are very strong arguments against the very thing that they are saying. Now, you might say, Brigantia, why interact with them at all? Well, the reality is that, this is the internet. Everything on the internet lasts forever. And it's always conceivable that someone might stumble upon a conversation or a comment thread, and they might, it might make them rethink some things, might give them some pause, or at the very least they might say, okay, so there's this Christian saying X, Y, and Z and being kind of nasty, and then there's a pagan who's reacting like an adult and a fairly reasonable person, if somewhat sarcastic at times. I think it's good for us to present our side of the argument. I think it's good for us not to just become other people's scratching posts, particularly over something that's as important as spirituality. So, as I alluded to, at least the pushback that I get about paganism, specifically from Christians, it either comes from a sense of, oh, well, you're pagan, therefore you're going to hell, or you're pagan and this is a Christian nation and you don't belong here. So, let's talk about the whole you're going to hell issue. One of the things I bring up is that there are very specific scriptures that Christians are supposed to be paying attention to that specifically say that such decisions about who goes to hell, who's spiritually disapproved or approved of, all of that is not in their hands. It is not their purview. That is not the task that they were given. Now, they do have scriptures in which they were commanded to preach and to make disciples, but coming up on someone's videos, leaving nasty comments about how someone's going to hell, that isn't preaching the gospel. I think we can all understand that, and I think any honest person would admit it. That's not how you go around persuading people of anything, let alone of trying to convert them or win a theological argument. You're just using that person as a punching bag, as a scratching post. You are unleashing your ire on that person because you think they're not important, and you think they should just have to take whatever venom you spew. Another issue with the Christians is that, let's just pretend for a minute that everything they believe is absolutely correct, that their God is the God and he's totally in charge of everything and we're absolutely accountable to him, whether we believe in him or not, whether we ever had a relationship with him or not, whether we ever heard a single solitary argument that made any sense to us about why his way was the right way and the only way and the perfect way. Let's just assume all that. Let's give them that for the purposes of this. Well, wouldn't I be better off facing such a personage in a state of honesty? Let's say, poof, lightning strikes me, I die, and I'm standing before, the Christian God, having to make an account of myself and awaiting his judgment. Okay. He might not particularly like my beliefs and anything I've done in my life, but if I'm at least honest with him about what I've done and why I've done it and why I couldn't give lip service to the idea that I believed in him, wouldn't I be better off than someone who had gone to church every week for their entire lives but never believed, never read the Bible, never really said the prayers with conviction? That it was just all a front and a facade in their lives. Who's going to be better off? The honest pagan who said, I sincerely just was not persuaded by anything that was ever presented to me, but I had a reverence for the earth you created. I have a respect for what it means to try to reach out to the divine, to try to form a relationship. I have a reverence for that. Who's better off? The person who at least has a reverent spirit, or the person who is a complete and total hypocrite? Because if you'll recall your Bible stories, not only did their God have very specific views about bearing false witness, he was also known on occasion to dish out some rather nasty punishments for those who did it anyway. So, as far as that goes, theologically, if I was totally wrong, I'd rather face that deity honest than I would a liar. I'm not interested in lying. After having been raised a Jehovah's Witness and having to give lip service and do a lot of things that I didn't really believe for the first 30 years of my life, I'm not interested in having deception, particularly spiritual deception, in my life anymore. Had been there, done that, didn't want the t-shirt, done. So, that is the theological argument. And of course, it doesn't convince them, but it does lay out the case. And a more reasonable person in a more temperate frame of mind might see that case and think, you know what, I can respect that. That person is being honest in their convictions. They're not trying to hurt anyone. They're simply just trying to live their lives in a manner that their conscience approves of. People can respect that a lot more readily than someone who says, you're going to hell and you'll deserve it, and I'm laughing because I think it'll be fun to watch you burn. Yeah, you cannot compare the two responses. You just can't. So, what about the issue of, well, this is a Christian nation? Let's examine this claim, because I've brought this up to many people on different occasions. I've said, well, the very institution of our government as formed, I'm not talking about how governance is practiced today. I'm talking about our actual founding documents of how things should be. It was founded to be a democratic republic. Well, the idea of a republic came straight from the pagan Romans. The idea of democracy or democratic processes, that came directly from the ancient pagan Greeks. We wouldn't have the framework that we have. We wouldn't have any of that without pagans. So, okay, there's one thing. We at least have some claim to this country and this form of governance, namely that pagans invented it. So, we do have that heritage behind us. But another comes to philosophy. Look at the Greek and Roman philosophers. Look at the Celtic Triad. Look at the Norse and Germanic Havamal and all the other, poems and sagas and eddas, in which it's all about philosophy and your view of life and how you see the universe interwoven together, how you should conduct human relationships, what's right, what's wrong. All of that is a heritage from ancient pagans. The Enlightenment, that whole period of time in which the church lost its power and said people started saying, you know what, you need to mind your manners and stop acting like you're the masters of everyone else's consciences. Oh, and by the way, the church should not be ruling the country. There should be a separation there. The whole Enlightenment period, all the benefits we have derived from that would not have happened without the beliefs and even to a certain extent the spiritual values of pagans. Now, yes, it is fair to say that there was a mush made of paganism and Christianity. Catholic Church, I am looking at you. You know what you did. You took a lot of pagan stuff, you gave it a Christian overlay so you could gain converts, and then the rest was history. Yeah. It has issues. There's a reason why it's the unhappy love child of Christianity and paganism. Ooh, kid was an experiment. It didn't go well. And I'm certainly not calling for a mishmash of or a convergence of pagan and Christian theology in modern times. I don't think that's necessary. But the reality is that we have inherited certain commonalities of culture, commonalities of beliefs about governance. And you know what? You can build a society on that, whether it's Christian and pagans, or you have Christians and Buddhists, or Christians and Hindus, or whatever else. You have a framework that people can more or less live with, in which we say, you know what? Your spirituality is your own private business. That is between you and whatever god or gods you choose to worship, if you choose to worship anyone at all. And then civil society can go along here. We can get along. We won't take each other's stuff. We won't be hurting each other, and it'll all work out one way or the other. That's what we have, and that's the argument that I really bring to it. And I said that you cannot get to the United States as we know it, or even the foundation of it as we know it, without having had the pagan influences as well as the overt Christian ones. So that's essentially how I handle it. And I'm no saint, I'm no angel. I am not always the most tactful person when I am making my counter arguments for the Christians who occasionally wander onto my channel. I admit that fully and freely, but I also know that when it comes to the internet and none of us have our hands clean, we've all said harsh things, we've all phrased things badly, and we've all had moments when we were not as tactful or as temperate as what we probably ought to have been. Welcome to humanity. We all misbehave. But we can make an effort, and hopefully by having some reasonable responses to these objections by monotheists who, show up on these pagan channels for whatever reasons, goodness knows why. Maybe that can start to build something. Maybe that can at least open a dialogue with some people who do have more receptive minds, more receptive hearts, saying, we're not asking you to change your religion. I'm not interested in persecuting you. I'm not interested in changing anything about your life. Just don't bother me when I'm off living mine. That's it. I mean, that's all. That's not only the key to how to have a civil society with people with very different belief systems, but it's also just says something about life in general, about being willing to leave someone else alone to attend to their own business and being more concerned about minding your own. So those are my thoughts on that subject. Maybe it'll be helpful, maybe it'll not. Maybe someone has a much better idea about how to deal with trolls than I do. It's open season here. But if you'd like to carry on the conversation, you can do so either here in the comments section or by coming to see me at Blackbird's Brew on Discord. There's a link to join in the description box below. In the meantime, I hope you like the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.